Next one is John Harrison, a Melbourne author who specialises in pop culture. He's the author of Hip Pocket Sleaze, the lurid world of vintage adult paperbacks, out through Hip Press Books. Now, pop publishers left no youth subcultural trend untouched, no matter how dark, disturbing or sleazy. This included when pop culture met the tragedy in 1969 of the Tate Libyanka murders. The killings inspired a wave of pop paperbacks, one of which John is going to read from tonight.
Thank you. So one of the subjects which I talk about in my contributions to this fantastic book that Ian and Andrew have put together is a look at some of the vintage paperback pulps which were inspired by, but not actually about, Charles Manson and his infamous cult of hippie followers who he sent out on a vicious, violent killing spree over 2 nights in August 1969. Kind of like a topical, I guess, subject at the moment with Charlie having passed away just a couple of weeks ago at 83. Spending most of his time in prison. Of course, the Manson murders terrified residents of LA and horrified and fascinated the world, leading to a spate of movies and novels that were clearly inspired, either directly or indirectly, by the case. These included a rash of low-budget exploitation films like the Helter Skelter Murders, the Manson Massacre, and the Love Thrill Murders, as well as Manson-esque hippie horror films such as I Drink Your Blood and The Death Master. Paperback publishers were also quick to cash in on the tragedy and help perpetuate the newfound public image of the hippie as no longer a symbol of peace and love, but one of evil and violence with a clear satanic angle. One of the resultant quickie paperbacks was Ray Stanley's The Hippie Cult Murders, published by McFadden in the US in 1970. You can see that great lurid cover art. Now, the Hippie Cult Murders has as its demented saviour a psychotic guru who was somewhat prophetically known as Waco, proclaiming himself to be the son of Zemba, the god of fear. Waco takes off much like Manson did from San Francisco to LA in his beat-up VW van, recruiting a family of mostly female followers to help him spread the terrifying gospel of Zemba across the city. So I'm basically just going to read a couple of pages from the opening of the book, which sets up the scene. The cloudy white fog bank boiling through San Francisco Bay is as constant as the bay itself. Waco Roberts sat on the jetty, staring at the fog as though it were a screen showing images. He sat with his knees under his chin and his arms wrapped around his legs. The misty air had a biting chill to it and he hugged his knees tighter. Waco was a big man with piercing blue eyes and thick eyebrows. His dark hair was unclean and hung straight to his shoulders. A razor had not touched his face in almost a year. The beard was full, shaggy and also unwashed. He wore workman clothes, stained and torn in places. The laces in the high-ankle shoes had broken and been tied together many times. The shoes themselves were scuffed and worn. Waco was aware of a power within himself, and he knew the key to it was his eyes. His voice was soft, his manner quiet. He had the ability to gather girls around him. He had once been told by a girl that he reminded her a lot of Jesus Christ, with that bushy beard, those piercing blue eyes, and the way he acted, like tolerant, like everybody came to him for wisdom, like they wanted him to tell them some great truth. The girl had been young and easy to impress. She had offered no resistance when he told her to undress. That rhymes. But on that foggy morning, Waco was not giving any great truth. He was searching for it. For a week, he had been getting up early every morning, driving his flower-decorated Volkswagen microbus to the bay, and had been staring all day at the fog. The images in his mind had been vague at first. He knew he was about to begin a quest, but the reason behind it and where it would lead him eluded him. Now it suddenly became very clear. The vague images in his mind formed and took shape. He knew now what he must do. He also realised that he was no longer himself, did not belong to himself. He had become an instrument, a tool by the images, directed by the images. It satisfied him and gave him an inner warmth. He stood up. Waco looked one last time at the foggy harbour. He was on a mission now, and he knew he would have to leave this place. He had seen a vision in the fog, and the vision had told him what he must do. As he climbed the jagged rocks leading from the jetty, he saw 2 men fishing. He saw 2 men fishing. Waco smiled to himself. He had an impulse to call them to him and tell them what he had seen. The impulse passed. He climbed behind the wheel of the bus. One of the fishermen poked the other with his elbow and nodded at the flower-decorated bus rolling away from the jetty. "Another one of them goddamn hippies," the man said. "What do you suppose he expected to find himself staring in the water like that?" The other man shrugged. Maybe he thought the fish would jump into his lap. Both men chuckled and went back to their fishing. Waco drove the bus towards a rundown section of the Haight-Ashbury district. A light mist trickled down, turning the streets into glossy mirrors. Waco parked the bus at the curb. He found himself smiling. All his life, Waco seemed to be looking for a purpose, a reason for existing. He remembered the constant fighting of his now divorced parents, neither of whom were found fit to raise him. He had been placed in the orphanage, but he had run away. Then came all the run-ins with the law, the juvenile record for stealing cars, other petty thefts, the prison sentence for possession of narcotics. It had all been because he was searching for something, looking for a goal. Now, after 30 years of existence, he had finally found it.